Hello everybody, this is Elham from Skin Chakra, and today I'm going to talk to you about the challenge test, which is a little bit confusing for those of you who are not in the European Union. The challenge test is mandatory in many parts of the world, and in the European Union it is a part of the PIF, product information file, that you have to submit before you bring a product into the market. So even if you are not in the European Union but want to sell a product in the European Union, you need to have your products challenge tested and you need to have the product information file. The main aim of the challenge test is testing the efficacy of your preservative system at a given concentration. So the concentration that you are using the preservative system in a certain formula and in a certain packaging. So the results depend on the nature of the preservative, formulation, dosage of the preservative, and the packaging. So let's see why we do preserve cosmetics and personal care at all. Preservative free is one of the highest selling claims in the world of personal care, and preservative is like a curse word for the public. We use preservatives for consumer safety and to keep the product integrity. So one part is that the product remains safe and usable, and the second part is the safety of the consumer. So not only the products that are not preserved, they are contaminated, they look ugly, they may smell off, and they are not really pretty to use. The other part is, even before it comes to the point that the product looks obviously ugly and contaminated, you may have some contamination and the consumer may use the product without knowing that it is contaminated, and it will cause damages to the consumer, specifically for certain age groups and certain immune systems that are more susceptible to contamination. So since over-preserving is as bad as under-preserving, one of the purposes of the challenge test is to find the minimum concentration of a given preservative system that you can use to preserve the product safely without overdosing the preservative. There are two aspects of product preserving. One is the safety of the product as it leaves your facility. So you have prepared a cream or a gel or a shampoo and you have filled it in the bottle and it is free of contamination. The other part is as the product is being used by the consumer. So the consumer leaves the jar open in the bathroom, or dips not clean finger into the cream jar, or leaves the screw cap of the shampoo open in the bathroom. So during that period, the product is again susceptible to contamination, and the preservative's role is to protect the product not only as it leaves your facility, but during the period that it is being used by the consumer. There is an ISO guideline, ISO 29621, that says every cosmetic manufacturer has to ensure that the product as purchased is free from the numbers and types of microorganisms that could affect product quality and consumer health, as well as to ensure that the microorganisms introduced during normal product use, this is what I mentioned, that the consumer leaves the jar open or dips a dirty finger into the jar or leaves the screw cap open. So this is that microorganisms introduced during normal product use will not adversely affect the quality or safety of the product. ISO gives guidance to manufacturers as well as regulating bodies to help define which products need a preservative system and which products do not need a preservative system or do not need a challenge test. So this is the main purpose of this ISO guideline. So all in one, challenge test does not only prove or ensure that the product is free of contamination and is safe to use, but that it remains safe for use under the given application conditions that are related to the product and packaging. So if you have a cream jar, obviously you will dip your finger into the cream jar. So the challenge test shall ensure that during the application of all of the content of that jar, if it's 100 grams, if it's 50 grams, if it's 500 grams, that during the shelf life and during the whole period of application, the product remains safe and free of contamination. Are you following me so far? So what does free of contaminants really mean? Cosmetic products are not sterile. Nobody expects them to be sterile. We are not working under clean room conditions. We are not preparing pharmaceuticals or surgical products, so they are not sterile. That is for the majority of ingredients, for the products, for the manufacturing procedure, for the facility, as well as for the packaging material. None of them is sterile. This means that they are not free of microorganisms, and there is an acceptable limit of the number and types of microorganisms in each cosmetic product, as well as in many of the cosmetic ingredients that we use. So if you have a look at the microbial test that you have outsourced to a professional laboratory, or the challenge test, or have a look at the specification of some of your raw material, you will see that they are not sterile and that they have an acceptable limit for number of certain microorganisms. Of the contamination, this is the limit for the microorganisms in the European Union. Again, most of the world is looking into the European Union, so this is pretty much a universal guideline. But if you want to make sure, have a look at your regional and country guidelines as well. The products are basically and generally divided into two groups. The products that are designed for children under the age of 3 years old, the products that are going to be used around the eye area, and the products that are designed for mucous membrane. The limit for these products is 100 colony forming unit CFU per 1 gram or 1 milliliter of the product. All other products, these are general use products that are not coming into contact with the lips or with the mouth cavity or around the eye, such as, let's say, shampoo, shower gel, facial cream, hand cream, body lotion. The limit for these products is 1,000 colony forming unit CFU per 1 gram or 1 milliliter of the product. And in any case, none of the cosmetic products shall contain some of the pathogenous microorganisms. These are Staphylococcus aureus, Pseudomonas, Candida albicans, and E. coli. There must be no one of these microorganisms in 1 gram or 1 milliliter of the product. So the product must be free of these certain pathogenous microorganisms, but for other microorganisms, there is a limit of 100 CFU for certain range of products and 1,000 CFU for other products. So low-risk products defined by the ISO guideline do not require a challenge testing. So what are these low-risk products? Challenge testing is a rather time-consuming and expensive test. So if you can create a product that doesn't need the challenge testing, it will accelerate the whole process of product development as well as reduce the costs of product development. So it is good to know at least which products do not require challenge test, so that you can plan it in your budget and in your time plan when you are planning a new product. Low risk products are products with a very low pH or a very high pH, that is a pH lower than 3 or higher than 10. These are no everyday use products. These are chemical peelings for the professional use, for the institutional use. These are certain hair dyes and hair perms, but in general, everyday use products do not have this extreme low or high pH. Products that contain over 20% alcohol. It is in some parts of the world 15%. In the EU it is 20%, but some parts of the world it is 15%. So take care of that. That products with a low water activity, a water activity lower than 0.75. Products that contain oxidizing material such as aluminum chlorohydrate, oxidizing dyes, or products that contain hydrogen peroxide. Products that are filled at a temperature higher than 65 degrees centigrade, and products with a certain packaging type. These are pressurized containers or single dose products, so that you open the packaging and consume the whole content of the packaging in one single use. These do not need any challenge testing. All other products require a challenge test, and that leaves us with water containing products, products that are going to be used with water. And there are some certain products that do not contain water and are even not water soluble or water miscible, but they have still a risk of contamination, and these are lipophilic plant extracts. Even in the EU, some safety assessors demand that you have a challenge test when you have an oily product or a lipophilic product that contains lots of plant extracts. Plant material, even dried plant material, is not completely free of contaminants. So there are a number of microorganisms there, but as long as the plant material is dry and there is no water in the system, there is no chance for these microorganisms to grow and to increase their number. But in a lipophilic carrier, such as a body oil or bath oil or hair oil, if you have lots of plant extracts, it is still a chance of moldering, and some safety assessors demand that you have challenge tests or microbial tests for those material with high content of plant extracts. Other ingredients that might have a heavy load of contaminants are clay minerals and plant powders. These are nowadays usually sterilized, and you have to take care of that. There are two methods to sterilize these tricky material. One is gamma radiation, which is not accepted by EcoCert or certain certifications. The other one is the thermal sterilization, which is more time consuming and more expensive, but it is a healthier method and is acceptable by all organic certification bodies. So if you are purchasing plant powders or clays, take care of that and have a look at the data sheet to see how the material is sterilized, or if it is not sterilized, have a look at the data sheet for the microbial count. There are different test protocols for challenge testing around the world, and depending on where you are going to sell your product, they might demand one or the other challenge test. Most of the laboratories can perform all of these tests, so it is just kind of demanding your laboratory which test to perform. The ISO 11930, which is available since 2019, is pretty much the universal one that it is being used everywhere now and have replaced almost all of the other tests. Then there is the PCPC, US pharmacopoeia, Japanese pharmacopoeia, European pharmacopoeia, and British pharmacopoeia. But the ISO is, since 2019, is the pretty much universally acceptable challenge test protocol. By challenge testing, they inoculate the product with certain microorganisms, so they deliberately add microorganisms into the product and then count the number of contaminants or CFU, colony forming units, in certain intervals. So when you deliberately add the contaminants to the product, you are having a high load of contamination, and if the preservative system in that product is capable of reducing the number of contaminants in certain intervals, it is 7 days, 14 days, 28 days, the number of contaminants must be reduced if your preservative system has the efficacy of protecting the product. So the challenge test is basically deliberately adding contaminants to the product and then coming back in certain time intervals and count the number of contaminants and to see if the number is reduced. These are the different contaminants that are added by different test protocols. We have European pharmacopoeia, US pharmacopoeia, and ISO, and the main difference is that the EP doesn't use E. coli, but the USB and ISO use the E. coli as the contaminants that they deliberately add to the product. So keep in mind that challenge test is not a routine test that you need for every batch of your product. So it is not a batch to batch test. This is something that you do at the beginning when you are developing a new formulation, specifically, as I mentioned, in the European Union. For your product information file and for your safety assessments, you will need the challenge testing for products that need the challenge testing and that are not exempt from the challenge testing. So before you create your final formulation, you need the challenge testing to see that the preservative system that you are using is capable of protecting the product. If you are changing an existing formulation or modifying an existing formulation, this happens every now and then for any reason. If you are changing a material supplier, or if you are doing changes in the process and specifically machinery, then it is recommended that you run another challenge test to see that the product that is coming out will pass the challenge test and the preservative system is capable enough. So these are every now and then. You usually, some companies have their own standards. They run a challenge test twice a year, or run a challenge test on their archive samples to see if the sample, even after the shelf life, remains safe and keeps its integrity. These are fine tunings that you need to define for yourself and for your product line. But basically the main requirement is during the development of a new formulation and for bringing a new formulation to the market. Challenge testing is rather time consuming. You need to plan at least 6 weeks. The challenge test itself takes 4 weeks, 28 days. But till the laboratory receives your samples and registers your samples and starts the test, you have to add a kind of buffer to that. So at least 6 weeks to 8 weeks. And it's a rather expensive test, about 300 per test, I think, at the moment. If you have more samples, they may give you a discount, but basically 250 euros to 300 euros. And when you are during a product development, you cannot send every single sample to the laboratory and wait 6 to 8 weeks for the results and pay for the results to just see that your preservative system doesn't work and go to the other preservative system or increase the concentration of the preservative system. So before you get to that point and sending your samples to the external laboratory, you can have your mini challenge test. As explained, challenge testing is deliberately adding contaminants to the product. So you can do it in your own laboratory, and after you are happy with the results, then you can prepare a sample with the results that you have, with the preservative concentration that you have, and then send it to the laboratory. So some of the easy methods to add contaminants to your products are the kitchen sponge, your cleaning rag, and dirty fingers. So just wring your kitchen sponge or your cleaning rag to the product, over the product. So add a few drops of your kitchen sponge to the cream jar, or go and do some gardening, or do some housekeeping and cleaning, and then dip your finger into the cream jar. These are the easiest ways to run mini challenge tests in your own laboratory before sending your products to the external laboratory, and then test the product. And if you are happy with the results, these are not a replacement for a professional test, but this is a pre-step for a professional test. So if you are happy with the results, then you can prepare your samples at a higher volume and then send it to the external laboratory. Having said all that, I hope I could clarify some of the questions around the challenge testing and preservative efficacy testing. And if you want to learn more, I invite you to become a member of our Green Cosmetic Science. You can become a member and join us for live monthly meetings. I leave you to enjoy the rest of your day or night or evening, depending on where you are, and looking forward to having your feedback about this presentation.